Hello and welcome back to Choices, Chapter 18, which is all about leaders and tyrants. So in Chapter 18, Dr. Adams provides a compilation of responses from group members throughout the years when he's asked people to identify characteristics of someone that they've feared and someone that they've respected. So here is a general list of what people came up with. For the person who is the most feared, also identified as a tyrant, the characteristics were violent when angry, it took advantage of weaker people, they were unpredictable, especially when using alcohol or drugs, they had no respect for the rights of others, they liked to boss people around, they only cared for themselves, and had no self control. In the end, these people were feared and sometimes hated. He then asked people to identify someone in their life that they really respected and list their characteristics. They were never abusive, had good moral character, dependable, kind of an even keeled temperament, respected the rights of other people. They knew the difference between right and wrong. They put the needs of other people ahead of themselves. They had self control, even when disciplining. They were loved and admired. So consider this list for yourself. Would the people around you, the people closest to you, list you as someone who is feared or respected? Dr. Adams brings home this concept of leadership and how leadership works in the home. It's important, I think, to really discuss how leadership, when it comes to a relationship, is much different than leadership at work. Where a lot of couples run into difficulty is when someone is trying to bring the same qualities of leadership that has propelled them to success at work and implement that the same way at home. Things are very different at work than they are in an intimate partner relationship and in a family dynamic. So, skills such as being decisive, taking charge, setting up expectations, and divvying up responsibilities, ensuring that people do what they are told, that can be very valuable in a work setting. But if someone tries to do that the same way at home, it causes problems. It can cause problems even in a relationship where they are dual active, even in a relationship where the spouse grew up in a military household, understands the dynamics. It's simply a different set of expectations when you're in a relationship and exercising leadership within the relationship than implementing things and acting as a leader at work. So being able to switch roles is really critical. It's also very difficult. You know, if you are acting one way for 12 hours at work and then expected to come home and operate by a different set of standards, it's a difficult transition. Even more difficult if you're deployed for, say, 8 or 9 months and you've been acting a certain way with certain expectations, and then there's a drastic shift coming home. But being able to kind of step in and out of different shoes and adapt is critical for showing some leadership at home. What Dr. Adams means by leadership here is really leadership by example. And that means that because you've had this opportunity to learn these skills, to practice them, to get more information, showing leadership would be implementing these skills making changes yourself even when it is difficult, and thereby setting an example leading at home. Also, a very big distinction between control and compromise. So, using control is to exert your will on someone else versus trying to compromise and strike negotiation and agreement. That's a leadership skill at home. Above and beyond, leadership at home implies placing the needs of the family, the needs of the relationship ahead of anyone's personal needs. And by showing leadership and leading by example would be to place the interest of the relationship ahead of your own personal needs. In chapter 18, Dr. Adams spent some time talking about male privilege and kind of in a historical context, the idea that a man historically has been the head of the household, and there's a certain mindset that can go with that, even as times have changed throughout the generations. There can still be a belief that the man's role is to work, perhaps the woman's role is to stay home, that work responsibilities are divvied up according to gender roles, that ultimately the man has responsibility as the leader, as in control of the household. So this type of belief in some relationships can contribute to abusive patterns, particularly when there is control and emotional abuse that's used to maintain these very stringent gender roles. Also can contribute to sexual abuse when there are beliefs about the woman's responsibility in terms of sexual obligations, the man's right to sexual access to his wife, that marriage implies consent. Really, we understand that even somebody who is married has the right to say no to any sexual behavior, that consent must be obtained. They have to be able to provide consent. So that would imply that anybody who is intoxicated, asleep, or otherwise unable to provide consent could still be the victim of sexual abuse within a relationship. But these type of dynamics don't always have to be in kind of this sexist, male privileged relationship. Controlling dynamics and imbalance with power and control can exist in any kind of relationship. So we know that females as well can be controlling a relationship and use abusive tactics to maintain upper hand in the relationship. This abusive dynamic can occur in same-sex relationships as well. So there can be disparity and there can be abuse in all forms of relationships. We also know that relationships and how they are structured in terms of roles, responsibilities, kind of leadership, vary according to people's values, how they grew up, religion, beliefs, culture, all help to shape how people decide to structure their relationships. And there is no single right or wrong way to be in a relationship. What's key is that however the relationship is structured works for both parties. So I know that I have friends who have relationships that would never work for me the way that they're set up, but it works for them, and vice versa. So the way my relationship is set up may not work for somebody else. But as long as it works for the two of you or for your family, that is what's key. And we find in research is that when there is equity in the relationship, and equity really just means fairness, balance, and agreement, that relationships are far more successful and people report greater happiness, satisfaction, and more likely to stay together. So this word agreement is really important. It means that no matter how the relationship dynamics are structured, whose job it is to take out the trash or change diapers or pay bills, what's important in all of that is that each spouse finds agreement in their designated roles and responsibility. The way you find out if your relationship has equity, there's fairness, balance, agreements, and mutual satisfaction, is to ask, to have this kind of conversation. Does what we're doing work for you? Keeping in mind that roles often change, they adapt. So the roles you had when you were dating will look different than when you're married, have toddlers and babies running around. Those roles will likely change as kids get older, as someone takes on a new job or goes back to school or is deployed. So having some flexibility in roles and being able to communicate about roles, work distribution, checking in with each other to make sure that there's fairness, there's balance, agreement, are satisfied. And perhaps most importantly is recognizing the value of each other's roles. This word value is very, very important. So to have equity would to mean that even though you might have different role distributions, that each partner values the contributions that the other one is making. So the work might look different and seem different, but it contributes equally in value to the overall relationship and to the family structure. So valuing each other's roles and being able to adapt to changing needs. Before we end this discussion on equity and value in relationships, I want to give a shout out to stay-at-home moms. There's a lot of research that's gone into identifying exactly what goes into being a stay-at-home mom and what that labor would actually be worth if a stay-at-home mom received a fair wage. So according to research, the average stay-at-home mom works about 90 hours per week. They provide a wide range of marketable skills, including childcare, finance management, cooking, transportation, education, cleaning, nursing, counseling, the list goes on and on. And according to the latest research from 2019, the average stay-at-home mom would earn $1,602.581, so that's $162,581 if she were paid market wages. So another way to say that is that if you went to care.com or another service to try to hire someone to perform the same tasks as the average stay-at-home mom, that's how much it would cost you to replace her. Of course, this research is focused on stay-at-home moms. We can assume that stay-at-home dads provide a similar service. So keep this figure in mind, $162,000. The next time Mother's Day rolls around and you're trying to decide if you should get a card or a present. So that's it for chapter 18. Let's talk about homework. Number 4 for homework will be describe the difference between a leader and a tyrant. You'll find some more description about this in the book. Number 5, think about people who are close to you. Do those close to you fear or respect you? Explain your answer. And finally, number 6, What steps could you take to ensure that your current or future relationship has equity? And that's the fairness, the balance, the agreement, and that each partner feels valued. So that is chapter 18. We have just 2 classes remaining. That'll be class 8 and 9. And then at the end of the 9th class, you'll be given an assignment, which is a relapse prevention plan that kind of ties together all of these main skills. I'll give you more information about that as it comes. But I just wanted to acknowledge you for getting this far into the class. It took a lot of hard work, and encourage you to keep it going because you are rounding the corner to completion. We'll see you back here for chapter 19.